Hello, everyone. My name is Eric K. Thomas, editor-in-chief of The Quintessential Gentleman. And today we are sitting here with Cecil Gentry, and he's a production designer for The Blackening, but he's also done so many other projects. Super, super dope. So happy to speak to you. What's going on, my brother? How are you?
I'm well, man. How are you?
I'm doing good. I'm doing good. You out in LA right now? How's the weather?
I'm in LA. It's bright and sunny, about 80 degrees or so, and typical LA weather. It's great. That's what's going on out here.
Awesome, awesome. So thank you so much for allowing us to speak with you today. I saw it before everyone else, The Blackening, super, super dope film. I was so happy to see it. Was so empowered to get other people to see it and just to express, like, one, the dopeness of it, two, horror film with all Black people, so we need to definitely support, and then also just like understanding the cultural significance of it, right? And then also trying to talk to people who are part of it. We interviewed the cast, and now being able to speak to you is super, super dope because you are the production designer for the film. Let's start off. I want to start real quick. What is the production designer for a TV or film series?
Okay, so basically the role of the production designer is to design the production in an overall sort of every sense of the phrase overall. So it boils down to designing props, and it's collaborative. I work with the director, I work with the costume designer, I also work with the cinematographer. We design shots together. We come up with a color palette for the project, for each character, let's say. Locations, I oversee the locations so that we find the right locations. And a lot of people kind of relate it to interior design, but for film and television. I'm designing the interiors and the exteriors. And so, basically what it boils down to is a visual storytelling of the project. So, you've got dialogue and you've got the words being spoken, but in addition to that, you've got everything that you see around you, all of the environments. That's something that I bring to the table. And as I mentioned, through a discussion and a collaborative effort with the cinematographer and the director, because it's his vision after all, his or her vision after all. So what we have to do is get on the same page, and I'm in charge of the different props that show up, picture vehicles, as I mentioned a minute ago. So essentially that's kind of, I would say, and not a lot of people, oddly enough, know what production design is, and not even what it entails. So I appreciate the question.
Of course, of course. So even taking a step back, clearly you just said not a lot of people know what it is. Pretty sure there's not a lot of people that do what you do. Then also not a lot of Black people that do what you do. So I would love to know, even like starting from the beginning, or where are you from?
I'm from Washington, D.C., born in Washington, and then went to school in New York.
Business degree, right?
Yeah. Business. Didn't go to film school, didn't study film. Long story short, happened to be living in New York, went to college in New York, graduated, did my internship at an ad agency, graduated, got a job at one of the top ad agencies on Madison Avenue, BBDO, did that for like a few years maybe, and just, I was a network buyer. And so it's so not creative, that position within that industry. And I had decided I wanted to do something a bit more creative and where I could like really exercise those creative muscles. And so I decided to move to Los Angeles. And then once I got here, it was easy though, because what happened was
It was easy.
Well, it was the easy part. I should rephrase that. The easy part about it was I came out here in the same advertising industry. So it was easy in that the work transition was easy because, I came out in that field. And then once I got here, it started to like hit me even more so that this is not really what I want to do and where I want to end up ultimately. And so then I started to seek out film, and knew some friends, and everybody out here is into the film industry. So it was easy to kind of tap into individuals who were already making things happen. And I didn't know where I would fit, to be honest. And I remember getting a film dictionary, a glossary, looking up the different titles. It just lists all of the different departments and titles from A to Z. And I came across art director. And I was like, that's me. And it's in the A's. So it was like really quick for me to like
I was like, you got
discover.
lucked out. Good to
I
hear.
lucked out. I was like, wow, that's who I am right there. And so, production designer is kind of, I would say within the last 25 years or so, a fairly new title, because back in the days of like Alfred Hitchcock and early filmmaking, the production designer was called art director. And that was the guy who did. Now it's different. You have a production designer who designs the entire production, and I actually hire the art director. That's usually my right-hand man, but it's changed a little bit in that sense. But that's how I got into it. And I started out, man, doing music videos and commercials, and and I had always expressed an interest in narrative, and I was working for this art director, and we were doing, I worked with Gary Gray and did Barry White videos and TLC and like all of that stuff. It
So
was
wait. So you
okay.
were in the music video sector during like the 90s,
Yeah.
2000s.
Yeah.
So I always say this, if I could go back to any decades doing what I do now, it would be like the 90s, 2000. You want to know one of the big one? I thought it was super dope, super cool. Of course, nostalgic. So I was growing up in that space. But you guys' budgets
Oh yeah.
were insane. And
was
we don't do nothing like that anymore.
You don't see anything to that scale. I don't even know that labels have music video departments anymore. There was a music video commissioner at every label. And you're right, the budgets on a lot of those, they were high end, working with like, all of these dope directors who've now gone on to Brett Ratner to direct feature films, and F. Gary Gray and all of these guys. And we all started out doing mad music videos and great budgets and telling stories, basically to the music, like playing it out, the entire, interpretation of what the song is talking about, the lyrics. So yeah, that was my beginning. And I was doing some commercials as well, which is also another big budget world in terms of, but it's also very, the creativity gets capped, because if you're not, the agency has a specific commercial that they want to shoot, and it's all storyboarded, and you aren't really allowed to step outside of that realm.
There's no, and I imagine. So I'm in the advertising space as well. And, there's so much, you're creative, but creative to a limit. You're boxed in. And especially like regulation on what can be promoted, what can be said, what can't be said. And now 2023, you can't say anything for real.
Yeah, and you can't really see anything else other than the product that they're advertising. Like, you got to be so specific. Yeah, exactly.
No, I get it. So, okay, so you got to LA, looked at the dictionary. Luckily enough, you found the word in the A section that allowed you to be interested. And then it was just more of like the connections piece, right? That allows you
to yeah, and and it was a film dictionary per se. So it had to do specifically with career paths within the film industry, within the sector. And then yeah, that's kind of how, and then it was about the connections. Yes, absolutely. You're correct. So it was about meeting people and knowing, I knew a few people in the business. A friend of mine was at Sony TriStar at the time, and he was in publicity, and he knew a lot of directors because they were doing all sorts of things. And he introduced me to this woman who was video commissioner, and I got calls, and I worked for free and got my name out there and created a buzz. And
for free. Let the people, we just want to a little bit on that, because in 2023, the people don't understand. I come up from the past, or back in my day, as I say, where I was doing things for free work just to get the experience, just to know what to do. But now I even think there's like laws now that say you have to pay people and things like that. But
there is.
I don't know. There's, to me, and maybe you could add to this, there's something about really trying something out, not getting paid for it, and still doing it, that kind of builds up your grit to be able to, know what you're doing and to work hard at it. And you appreciate it a little bit more, at least in my opinion.
I agree wholeheartedly. It builds up grit. It builds character. It builds, it's the best experience when you're out there, and also it inspires the hunger. You find out quickly when you're working for not much or for free, whether or not you really want to do it. If you got the stick-to-itiveness, if you will. So that's, that's something that education can't buy. Like I said, I didn't go to film school, so I got out there. I'm blessed to have pretty much done every job in the art department, which is what production design overseas, all of the art, not art on the wall, but the art, you know, of the film. And so, and art on the wall as well.
Yep.
But yeah, I mean, it is basically the best education, getting out there, working, assisting somebody, and then getting paid like a little bit. And then once you've like really established yourself as somebody who shows up, has the commitment, works hard, produces the right product, and you know, then you start to get paid. And then, you know, I moved into, I mentioned I wanted to be in, you know, get involved in narrative, which is filmmaking. I was working with an art director who had no interest in it. He loved, you know, working in commercials, paid a lot more at the time.
Yeah.
So now TV is like, it's a different world now. Everybody wants to work in TV because with all the, you know, platforms, I mean, TV shows are like films now, which is great. It's opened up the space in a very creative and lucrative way. But you know, I had expressed an interest in working in the narrative format, and he passed a job on to me. I don't know if you're familiar with this film, Swimming with Sharks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Kevin Spacey. That was my very first film. And
Wow.
so that particular film right now is at pretty much every film school in the country. It's on the syllabus, and everybody has to watch that. It's about the industry, you know what it is. But that film got passed down to me because there was an art director who I was working with who didn't want to do narrative.
Wow.
And so from that point forward, I was like, let's go. Got an agent, started working and doing different things. And yeah, I work all over the place, everywhere, all over the country, and all types of genres. I mean, I kind of have gotten myself into this sort of like psychological thriller / horror genre.
Okay.
I did a series for Blumhouse called Into the Dark.
Dark. Yep.
And that's where, you know, Get Out came out of, and, you know, that whole world. But that's a great series that kind of opened me up into that sort of world. And so that's where I've been focusing.
So I do want to know, I believe that you didn't go to film school, but you got accepted and was going to go.
No, I did not actually. I didn't even apply.
You didn't even apply. I thought I read that you did. You were there in it. So my apologies.
No, I didn't apply.
Okay.
I was gonna major in music. I mean,
Oh, wow.
I had come from this background of you know, I played woodwinds, and I was in a DC youth orchestra, and you know, we traveled, and I was really musically inclined and excelled in it. And
that's where you were focused.
Yeah. And so I had a conversation with my parents, more specifically my mom, and she was like, you know, I don't want you to be a starving musician. So I said, let me rethink this, because I don't want to be a starving musician. But you know, most Black musicians end up like playing in jazz bands. Very few of us get inducted or get to play in like the symphonies or the philharmonics and things like that. Very few. And you had mentioned something earlier, you know, there aren't, when I joined the union, there weren't many Black production designers. I think there were like 5 of us. Maybe there's 10 of us now. It's still very limited. And I think it just has to do with people not really knowing and understanding the milieu, the you know, the genre in terms of an option as a career, unfortunately. So I like to spread the knowledge so that people can, you know, see themselves. If they see me, they can see themselves doing it, and maybe seek out, because, you know, film schools, I taught for a little bit at FITM, Fashion Institute of Design and Merchandising. They have a production design program. I taught for 1 semester, but it's not something that's on the radar or that's pushed as a field to enter.
Yeah.
You know, you have to know people and, you know, understand it and kind of find out about it. And have that inquisitive mind. If you don't know what you want to do, I don't know, I always say, you know, find out if the industry has a glossary with a list of jobs, and you might see yourself, which is how I approached it.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So, you know, interview directors all the time, and people in those spaces, and even, you know, actors, and a lot of times, you know, they are kind of stuck with a project for a period of time, right? Does that work on your side? Like, are you able to to work on multiple projects at the same time? Is it difficult?
That's a bit difficult, because what I can do is, as I'm wrapping one project, start prepping another. And that happens in the TV space a lot, because especially with this Into the Dark series. I mean, we were putting out 90-minute movies, and different directors would come in. So we're shooting and then we're prepping for the next episode. So in that sense, it happens, but it's for the same network. It's the same project, but to go completely step away from a project and start on, you're working on a Lionsgate film and then step away and go do a project for Warner Brothers. That's a bit at the same time. That's a bit much because something's going to give, and I'm all about the details. And so I'm very hands-on. So I would find that pretty difficult, but yeah, because I haven't really done that. But yeah, prepping in television, you do have to sort of, new director comes in, you got to start location scouting for the next episode and start prepping that. So yeah.
So getting into the Blackening, how did that opportunity come about?
So that was interesting. I happen to know a producer who knows the line producer, Dwan Fox, and he had called her and said, Tim Story is looking for a Black production designer. Mm-hmm. And, nowadays you got to be careful with saying that because, it's like, I mean, I remember I was in New York doing a NBC pilot last year for Malcolm Lee, Spike's cousin. And so, I had called, it was shooting in New York, and I had called the union and I was trying to like dance around wanting to find a Black set decorator who sort of is in charge of decorating my sets, with guidance. And so I kind of sensed that I was being questioned. Who is this? And what's the name of the project? And why does the person have to be? And I was like, ooh, they're trying to like, nail me to something here. So I backed away from it and just like, but so yeah, you have to be careful with that. But my friend Kim Ogletree knew the line producer, and he reached out to me, and I read the script and did a breakdown and a lookbook and presented it to Tim. And then he and I met, and there was a connection. And so that's normally how it works. I'll get the script, I'll read it, break it down, do a lookbook, present my version of how I envision it, and then meet with the director, and we kind of like cash out some creative thoughts and ideas. And sometimes it works, sometimes you get the job, and sometimes you don't.
I wonder, because I start to, and I guess you get a lot of this background based off the advertising space, where you have to put together proposals, work on all proposals, and then it doesn't happen and you spent all this time working. Is that normally like, it seems like that's the case when it's like an opportunity, you have to do all this work, and I mean, kind of can give ideas. And then what happens if sometimes you don't get the job, but then you see your idea? Has that ever happened, or have you had those type of scenarios?
Yeah, I've had one in particular that was like gut wrenching because I had done a lookbook and pretty much a TV series, and it's on the air now. It's been winning awards and stuff like that. And I put in a lot of work and really designed the whole show because I really wanted to do it. A Warner Horizon show, and I didn't get the job. And I used to submit my lookbooks, and so they walk away with all of my propriety. I no longer do that. Good. I love Zoom because I can put it up, share the screen with everybody, walk them through my slides, and at the end of the day, once I'm gone, they can be taking pictures of the screen or whatever. But to go back to that instance, I didn't get that show, and I watched it. And my ideas and everything was just like, there it is. There's the show I designed. So they took the concept and gave it to the designer that they wanted to do the show. And so I'm glad I don't have to relinquish my material. So that happens sometimes. And sometimes you get the job and sometimes you don't. I'm pretty good at putting lookbooks together. I think that's one of my strong suits, telling the story visually. And I don't mind. It's a part of the process. I don't mind putting a ton of work into it. I sometimes have to pull back and stop myself from designing the whole film and just pull key areas that, like hero sets, we call them, that really tell the story rather than the entire series, because I tend to go all in. That's just how I'm wired. But
but do you want to, I would say to that too, it also helps you to not put so much into it so that you give kind of the other people that, more importantly, the director, kind of room to come in and kind of collaborate with you, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. Again, it's my version of it all. And then, and what happens is if it's close and if it's like, oh my God, this is exactly what I was thinking, and you're right on the money and the hits great, and then if it's far off and like, I'm not sure, then we can like, this is great, but how about, and then yeah, we tweak things or whatever. And then if it's way off, then you're like, thank you, but we've gone in a different direction.
Right.
Yeah, I've been pretty blessed.
Perfect. So I want to talk about my favorite set or scene for The Blackening, which
Yes.
is my favorite scene is the first time the entire group is in the room with the game and they all go through asking questions and answering them. I die every time. I've seen it twice now.
Nice.
But I want to know like what went into, I will say specifically that said, and then kind of overall like your ideology, right? Because they presented to you, this is a film, Black horror. Was there anything specifically like, I definitely want this, or I definitely want it to look like that?
Yeah. Well, the first thing we started to do in this project was design the board game, because that's a pivotal and really important piece to the story overall. I mean, that's how they die, that's the game that sort of is the ticking time bomb, if you will, based on the answer. So we had to come up with the design of the game, the color palette. The director talked about what he wanted in terms of like having it feel like the board is a forest and you move the pieces through the forest, because there is a point in the film where they're running through the forest to get away from the killer. And so we had also, the director had an idea of the centerpiece looking sort of like blackface, Sambo, if you will, and that shows up. And that has to do with, it's a satire on it being a Black cast, and typically all the Black characters die first in these types of movies. And so that was a play on that. And that was the first piece of business that we attacked. And then that went through several iterations. I mean, I worked with a company out here that I work with all the time, and we put tons of visuals together, and I changed some things and went to the director and we looked at it and how about this and place that and do that. And just ultimately we found the right thick mix of everything.
Okay.
And then, so the room was a great room. I mean, it had the right size, that green paint and the shutters, and it just gave us this feeling of, oh wow. And the door with the sign on it, and once you walked into that room, yeah, we had to trick it out. Bookshelves with nothing but games. It was like the game room, if you will.
Yep.
It was a perfect location, space in the house.
TV.
Yeah. Perfect space in the house for that.
Okay.
And we loved it. Yeah. So we went with that. And all of those bookshelves I bought in, obviously. There was one opening. I closed it off and used bookshelves to put in front of the doorway, took the door off, and so that it just seemed like there was one way in, because we didn't want there to be any escape. So that was also a part of the decision made to tell the story. Once they walked into that room, there was nowhere to go but to play the game.
It was so awesome. And I love, and the house was huge, right? Like there were so many different rooms, or it looked like there were so many different rooms that they were going through, from like the basement to, the game room to all of that piece. So no, it was definitely awesome. I will want to know, what was some of the challenges specifically with this project? Were there specific kind of not necessarily like design element that kind of challenge there, but just were there like any physical challenge that you guys had to overcome while filming?
Well, you had just mentioned a little bit about, yes, the house was huge. One of the logistical, not nightmares, but logistical challenges is that the house was not that big, actually.
Okay.
I mean, it was great in that it had this beautiful flagstone sort of stone wall. And that was great. And it felt, and wood, the dark walnut, all of that was great. The main room, the kitchen, dining room, great. There was a room off the side, but I had to build the hallway.
Wow.
So that it felt like there was this hallway connected and they went in the door. That's why we never really got to see all the way in. Little movie magic. They're going down the hallways looking in. There was really nothing on the other side of those doors. It was a hallway. And then the basement was also at a different, that was also a different location. And so we stitched it all together, and they shot enough footage so that in the editing process, it was seamless.
Okay.
And so in terms of logistics, you got a schedule, shooting schedule that you have to adhere to. And when you're jumping around to prep a location so that when the team shows up to shoot it, it's ready. It takes a lot of manpower. And so sometimes it can be a bit of a, and if you don't have enough people, you gotta, go to production and ask for more people so that it can get ready in the amount of time it needs to get ready in. So yeah, there's some logistics involved. That I would say was probably the, now had it would have been ideal to have found the house that had everything. Big enough, all the rooms and a hallway and a crawl space. And, but we hunted and hunted and hunted and circled back because we had seen so many houses and we circled back. And that was that was one of my favorite houses. There was another one that I really liked, but the access to the house was difficult. It was in the Hollywood Hills and trucks getting up the hill and all of that. Just, it made it prohibitive. But, yeah, it would have been great to have found a house big enough that had everything, but that house had the overall, and then we just pieced it together, and the editor did a masterful job at stitching all of the elements together.
Is there more, how often does it happen to where you have an idea, you already have it built out, you get on set and it doesn't work? Is that pretty often, or is that more of like I'm doing my job, being good at it, and then you don't have those type of issues?
I don't have those type of issues because it's all about communication. I mean,
Okay.
during prep, you kind of have to like hash all of that out so that, because that's, time is money. You can't show up and then it's not ready to shoot, or it's not what we talked about. So it's all about communication. They get director's plans. My directors will get director's plans. They will know exactly the layout, where the pieces of furniture are going. They can block shots on paper, or they can come to the location with the talent and walk them through for rehearsal to make sure that everything, and I share a lot, like the lookbook, pieces of art that's going on the wall. I like to get the director's input so that they feel like everything's right for the character. I have my ideas and I think so, but I share it all so that way, when it comes to the day, on the day, we're ready to go.
How does it work when in terms of like buying or renting, or like kind of the furniture stuff, or do you just got a whole warehouse of things you have accumulated over your career? Like, how does it work that way?
I used to have a storage with tons of things like that, but it's just, it doesn't make sense because each project requires something different. And, I don't want to pull out the same bag of tricks for different projects. It's a combination. You rent and purchase. And for shows, TV shows, if the show is going to be established and you're shooting 8, 10, 12 episodes, it makes sense to purchase it, because the rental for that amount of time, 6 months, would not be a good, cost efficiency. So it's a combination. Renting props, a lot of props are rented, some are purchased. So it depends. And for film, it's a lot of rentals, and it's always both though. It depends on,
Project.
Yeah. And it depends on, if my decorator shows me something that is like, oh my God, that is the right piece, we have to buy it.
Yeah.
And then we'll sell it at the end of the production, have a little fire sale.
Yeah.
Or it might end up in some producer's home, or, something like that.
We need to figure out where I know it's discounted when y'all sell it on your end. We got to find out where that is so we can get in it.
Oh yeah, exactly. Well, a lot of times they'll put on like Facebook Marketplace. I know a lot of decorators, once they're liquidating the sets, there's a lot of stuff that people are giving away and selling for dirt cheap. I mean, Facebook Marketplace is a great space to find things from different shows. Yeah.
So when you projects, right? What's more ideal? Do you like finding a space, like working from like an actual location that's kind of already built, or like building a whole location, kind of studio lot perspective?
I like both. I love the idea of building, because you're creating something from nothing, and then you have total creativity, autonomy in terms of like what it is that it should, and then you can dial it in and build the exact thing with the exact layout that's required, the perfect geography. scripted. He comes down the hallway, turns into a room. You can make that hallway as long as you want. We can talk to the director. Different walls have to fly so they can put the camera where a wall is and get really interesting angles, pull the ceiling, shoot from above. Somebody's in the bed looking up. How do you get that in a location unless you've got 20-foot ceilings? Floor to ceiling height, so there's a lot of advantages. You also get a lot of control if you're shooting on a soundstage. You have control to be there and do whatever you need. And locations has a lot of outside influence. You got, if you're in a neighborhood, neighbors, you've got outside noises, you've got, who knows what, somebody's alarm goes off, you got to hold the roll because you got to wait until that goes off because that interferes with sound. So there are a lot of challenges. A lot of smaller budget projects like to shoot on location, they just don't have the money to build massive sets.
Yeah.
And a lot of the larger ones build a lot because there's a lot you can do.
Control.
CGI, yeah. I like both. I love building though.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
So what advice would you give to anyone that's looking to follow in your footsteps?
I would say, yeah, in terms of production design specifically, I always say to get out there and meet as many people in the business as you can. That's a place to start. And then figure out how you can find yourself in an art department, attached to a crew. You befriend a production designer, befriend a set decorator, an art director, a prop master, and then, offer to assist and come in and learn. Or you can go to film school. But if you don't have that as an option, it's about, getting to know as many people as you can that can bring you along and help you. I would also say, do your own study. I taught myself. I have a library full of architectural books, interior design books, locations from all around the world, photography, fashion, classical art, Monet, you name it, Basquiat, modern artists. I mean, there's tons of wealth of information out there. Humanities, in other words, why people think about certain things, what shaped certain cultures, Roman Empire, and how important Catholicism was and how that shaped a lot of the architectural designs. And so Egyptian, the whole thing. So I would say immerse yourself in books,
In your opinion, do you believe that LA is still the best place for it now where we have like Atlanta and how the production is kind of growing and opportunities is there? Is LA still there? Or even if it is there, do you think Atlanta will ever get up there?
It's an interesting question. It's a good question. And that, I find that because I go all over the place, I mentioned work to work. I find that people, when you come up in LA and you get trained in LA, it's been the film capital of the world for such a long time. There's a real rigorous training that you get. And then when you go elsewhere, it's different. It's not the same. And I'm trying to just so that I can phrase this correctly. Let me see. I think experience is tighter. It's just a little more because it's here. Everything's here. These other places and Atlanta's getting there.
Yeah.
I mean, with Tyler's studio and, it's getting there. It's definitely, they call it, the new Hollywood, just because so much shoots there. In terms of crew, I think there are better crews here in LA, but I think that's changing. New Orleans also there's a ton that's been shooting there. And a lot of people have moved so that they can work more often to places like Atlanta and New Orleans. I lived in New Orleans for 2 years. I went down for one film and that turned into another project and I was like, wait, I don't want to actually live in Atlanta, New Orleans, and I could have stayed and I'd probably still be there now, but I was like, no, I'd rather have my home base be LA and then I just go out and do and work all around,
That's awesome.
But yeah, it's getting there. But the training that you get here in LA is like no other in Los Angeles, in Hollywood. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So my last question is, what can we look forward to from you? Like, come on, what set are you working on that we can be excited about to see your work again?
And let me just recap. I'll say that because there are a lot of people here who grew up in the business.
Right.
And a lot of these other places are newly in the business.
Sure.
And so people who grew up in the business where you get that kind of training from have been doing it for a long time. It's steeped in a certain knowledge that you can't get if you go to a place that have only been in the business, for 10 years.
Yeah.
So it's got a different culture in terms of the educational process.
Sure. Sure.
And so, but what's happening for me now? Well, with the strike, I mean, nobody's starting anything. The writers are on strike right now. The directors are good. Their contract ended. SAG-AFTRA, the actors actually voted to authorize a strike if need be. The contract expires on the 30th of June, which is in a few days.
Crazy.
And then I think that after, fingers crossed, that, and from what I'm reading, negotiations are proving to be successful right now. So I'm hoping that the actors don't strike, and then they circle back to the writers and kind of see if they can hammer out. At the end of the day, though, it's already like the end of June. Nothing's going to start before July 4th. So we're looking at, even if they do come to a negotiation, the writers, we're looking at not until, I don't know, sometime in July after the 4th for sure. So I mean, my agents called me, there's been some checks on my availability for like September. There's a film in Atlanta, by the way.
Make sure you look me up.
Yeah, I will definitely. And so they want to shoot in September. So that would mean, if we can go and start prepping in July, and shoot for 2 months, September, October, and then prep July, August, or something like that. I will definitely, look you up. So there's a few things. I have my agent and I talk pretty much weekly. There've been some calls coming in. So I think that and once the floodgates open, I mean, there's going to be tons of options. And there's also a TV show in Atlanta that I might jump on and they've been picked up for season 3 and 4. I don't want to mention it though, but I could to you offline, but yeah, I don't. Is this recorded and like format? So people are actually watching this with us?
No, they will. I'll cut it up and put it on our YouTube.
Got it. Okay, perfect. Okay, gotcha. And then you also have the online magazine, correct?
Correct. We have the Yep.
Okay, gotcha. And what's the difference? I mean, is it both? Is it the same thing, and you just put excerpts in the magazine that take you to YouTube? How does that?
Yeah, so this one will be on our website, which is more like a blog post, right? Where we'll interview you, put it on the YouTube, and then we'll write a story with it, and then the YouTube interview will be underneath. So people can read it, and then they'll be able to, listen to the full interview.
Oh, nice. Very nice. Yeah, I mean, so there's a couple of things circling, Yeah. So that's always good. Yeah.
Well, thank you for your time. We appreciate you joining us today. Super excited. Again, if anyone has not seen The Blackening, make sure you go check it out. You should have. If not, I'm about to spoil it for everyone and crack on all the jokes that I loved about it. But so good. It was such a great production. It looked great. It felt great. Sometimes looking at productions and stuff and see this, that doesn't really work, or that looks weird, and it sometimes can be very distracting. So your job matters, right? I just try to give people a lot of the things that we do from our perspective is, actors are great, but I like to focus on the directors, the producers, the writers, the set designers, the production designers, so that, because none of this the actors wouldn't be able to do anything if it wasn't for people like you. So to have these type of conversations were amazing. And this was a great conversation. Helped me learn so much. I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much too. I appreciate it.